Hi, and welcome to Chief for Yourself. Thanks for being with us on the call today. Great to have you here wherever you are in the world at this moment. We're heading toward a brand new year as we record this program, and I wanted to use the opportunity to take a look at our relationships rather than look back on them. Look forward and go into the new year with maybe a new look on relationships. Our guest today is a self-described soccer mom to her 3 kids with all of the busyness that a soccer mom experiences. But Gina Vucci has also explored her relationship challenges, and she's come away with growth and a better understanding of herself. Gina is co-author, along with Shakti Gawain, of the Relationship Handbook, A Path to Consciousness, Healing, and Growth. The book gives readers lots of insights that can help them arrive at their own self-understanding. Gina, you're the co-writer of the Relationship Handbook with Shakti Gawain, and Shakti, of course, has given us creative visualization, a number of other titles. You've worked together for years now. Shakti, a colleague, but also a mentor. What have those years working together been like for you?
Amazing. It's been a great gift in my life, and one that I'm very grateful to the universe for bringing. I showed up at Shakti's office to work in her event production department, and she and I just quickly were very close and connected, and I eventually came on staff as teaching staff, and was mentored by her, as you mentioned, as well as trained in other coaching and teaching and counseling fields, and had the great pleasure of working with her over the last 16 years. And we've been co-leading workshops together for the last 12. I've worked on all of her writing projects in that time, and this is the first book that we co-authored together.
Mm-hmm. The book, I guess, is kind of an outgrowth of your workshop experiences?
Yes. In the last decade or so, our most popular workshop was our relationship workshop. Mm-hmm. Relationship as Teacher was the title. And I think it's because Shakti and I are so passionate about relationship and learning from these interactions that we have every day, healing from our childhoods and family wounding stories, anything we're carrying inside, that we found that relationships unlock these opportunities for us to grow and heal. And so we individually each had passion for working on our relationships in our own lives, but as we found that relationships were this totally accessible everyday interaction opportunity for this healing and growth. So it's a very rich workshop, very interactive, and as Shakti and I were shifting out of co-leading together, she's entering retirement, we wanted to put this information in a book, and we just wanted to create a handbook that was accessible, and really we want to come alongside everyone and anyone on their path and wherever they're at, whatever they're dealing with, and just how can we use, like I said, these everyday interactions as opportunities for growth and healing.
Psychologists often put their clients' focus on the relationship itself, but the thrust of the Relationship Handbook is different. Talk about that difference.
We really focus on our relationship with ourselves, and because just practically speaking, that's the only influence we have in our lives is really over ourselves. We can't control other people. We can't change other people. We can't get them to see what we see. So first of all, it's just empowering and to take ownership and responsibility and be able to make these changes from within. But also, it's the primary relationship that we have. It's the foundation for our lives in all aspects of our lives. And so often we enter in relationships, even with colleagues, even with family, not just our primary partners, where we're looking for something we're missing. We're coming from a place of lack, and we may not even be conscious of it. So we're just pursuing that unconsciously as a way to complete or to get nurturing or healing. And so we shift the focus and our orientation towards our relationships as being able to fulfill those needs for ourselves and bring the love and nurturing that we're looking for to ourselves. And so our orientation is a little different. This isn't a fix-it book on how to fix relationships or get the partner of your dreams, although we do use these tools for those purposes. But we're really interested in, like I said, coming alongside people in their process and whatever's up for them. If they're having difficulties or conflict or challenges, often stagnation. Maybe there's not a conflict, but there's just stagnation, no growth. And so this is a way to bring aliveness to your life and to your relationship, and to bring healing for those of us who are carrying around trauma and wounding from our past. And so Shakti and I have been in therapy and studied many different spiritual traditions, and that has all been complementary and so helpful. And we found this body of work was accessible, in each of those modalities, and that could be integrated into any practice that you're already doing, and just help enrich it and really catalyze another level of growth.
Mm-hmm. Well, the ideas of healing and growth are probably easier for us to grasp as part of retooling our relationships. But we're also talking about a path to consciousness. Well, let's define consciousness for these purposes, and then talk about where consciousness comes into play as far as the relationship is concerned.
Mm-hmm. We really describe consciousness, we frame consciousness as awareness and awakening in the moment. So having presence with ourselves in the moment, into what we're experiencing, having insight and visibility into the experiences that are within us, that we describe that as consciousness. And that consciousness is not static. It's not a place that we arrive at and now we're conscious. We're not conscious, we're conscious beings in the moment that we have awareness, and then that moment changes. And so our goal is really to have conscious choice. So as we work on this process and we gain insight and understanding into how our inner world is playing out and how the reflections in our outer life are reflecting what is going on in our internal process, we can have awareness of where am I out of balance? Where am I off? And having awareness that I'm maybe over-identified in one part of my life, or maybe I've created a shadow. Maybe there's aspects to my personality that I've completely denied or suppressed, and that the relationships in my life can reflect that there's a gap, there's a void, and that void I created by denying a part of myself. And so consciousness is our experience of expanding and holding all that we are and all of the possibilities for the potential that we have.
Your own personal challenges began at a young age. You lost your father early on. You experienced violence and abuse. You were rebellious as a youth. You write that you found recovery in a power greater than yourself. In your blog, you give thanks to God. And I'm wondering, how do you experience your higher power?
Mm-hmm. I really, I am so grateful for the program of recovery. Like you mentioned, I sought out alcohol as a way to medicate what I was feeling, because I had a lot of life experience by the age of 12 that I didn't know how to make sense of, and I wanted relief. And so I sought out drugs and alcohol for that relief. And thankfully, in the program of recovery that I landed in, the relief came from a higher power that I chose to call God. And even though I was raised Catholic and I had a lot of objections and there was a lot of intellectual rebellion around different concepts that didn't make sense to me, I was able to step out of that and just find a loving presence in my life, a higher power. And like I said, I choose to call that power God. I've pursued that path over 26 years now, and I've been in active recovery these years and just continue to grow my relationship with God. Today I am a Christian, and I think everybody in my life was just as surprised as I was. And it's a place where I feel comfortable. I have a church that I love, that we're super active in social justice and moving out into our community and being of service. And all of those themes really resonate with me. So I really get to nurture my relationship with God and really care for those in need in my community. So that's how it's being expressed today. And I am really thankful for the path that I've been on, and to have stayed sober all these years and have an opportunity to share with others. Getting sober was probably easier because I was a teenager, and I always say I had like a half a brain anyway. But staying sober through life's challenges. I've been married twice and divorced twice, and a survivor of domestic violence, and through this work that Shakti and I have been teaching and leading for these years, as well as a really rich spiritual life and a complete, unwavering, submitted position in relation to God. I just have this unwavering faith in God in my life today, because the evidence is that I choose to call him he, just easier language, but it's just completely shown up for me and held me through so many life experiences and just really cradled me. And so that loving presence in my life, I'm so grateful for.
When I think of a higher power, I think of 12-step groups. I attended meetings for a time, ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. I guess you're okay with the whole 12-step concept?
Yeah, that's my my upbringing. I say I grew up in those rooms, and that framework really worked for me, because I didn't have to get into religion. I didn't have to get into those concepts. I just needed to identify a loving presence in my life that was greater than myself, that I was willing to try and rely upon. And so for me, that started with a very juvenile, very small, limited idea, and has grown and expanded. And I haven't even necessarily set out on a path to grow spiritually. It's that I've had amazing, challenging, bringing me to my knees experiences where there was no other option other than to believe in a power greater than myself and trust that power was a source that I could lean into and rely upon, that was going to show up for me. And so my experience in my spiritual life is really one of faith based on my experience of surviving. There's no other explanation for the events that I've survived other than the universe intervening on my behalf.
Yeah, the book very vividly brings out your trials and what you went through and the whole process. As a kid growing up in the industrial northeastern U.S., I was told that life wasn't easy. People worked hard, they often drank hard, and a phrase that I heard often was, "He's such a nice person when he isn't drinking." The assumption was that the problem was in the alcohol. And I'm wondering, in your own workshop experience, do you hear that phrase? And if you do, what do you say to the person who says that?
I think the culture in relationship to alcoholism has really changed. I think we have a lot better understanding that it's a disease. And so I think the thinking and our orientation towards alcoholism as a disease has really changed. I do think that we have a lot of people in our workshops who are struggling with alcoholism or mental illness or other addictions, post-traumatic stress and trauma that's still gripping them. And they're wondering why they're stuck or why they can't stop or why can't they live differently, even though they know there's another way that's better. And equally, we have people coming to workshops trying to understand their partners or their loved ones, trying to understand why don't they stop. And so as, speaking, from a perspective of addiction and illness is that we do embrace that illness as exactly that, an illness. And that, in particular with alcoholism, is where I feel I can speak into, because I have the most experience with that, is that, my powerlessness over my alcohol is equal to my powerlessness over other people's alcohol. And I can't stop anyone's drinking any more than I can stop my own. And I have to call in power greater than myself for that to be possible. And then physical sobriety is just one small part of being in recovery. And, if physical sobriety was the trick to, that we just stop drinking and our lives, improve, then we would all be well. But alcoholism is a pervasive illness that affects all areas of our lives. And we start with physical sobriety, and physical sobriety is a must. But we continue on a path of recovery, and we continue to grow in our relationship with our higher power, and we continue to look at ourselves and grow from that. And I think also, in our body of work, how we work with addiction is that often what happens is that there's parts of us that are either traumatized or suppressed or oppressed by other parts of ourselves, and that alcohol allows a release. And so we work within this framework, we work with the different selves that are involved in the addiction, whether either acting out or if I'm trying to control someone else's addiction around me, I would be looking at what are the parts of me that feel the need to control that. And it's often a child, and again, it's often an experience in my adult life that's reflecting something from my childhood.
What does the shadow self have to say to us?
Well, first, I don't know if it's clear in how we've been speaking, but our personalities form in response to those who raised us and the experience in our formative years, the culture we were raised in, the environment we were raised in, and who raised us. And so we develop our personality in response to those, to our environment, and we develop the ways that work for us best, to have our needs met, to feel loved, to be nourished and nurtured. And so they form in a very noble way, and they're really trying to help us. What happens is as we move into our teen years and our adult life, that those aspects become our default. So more and more we lean into those ways of being in our lives. So let's say I developed being responsible. My father was killed in an accident at a young age. I was 8, and it was just before my 9th birthday. He was killed in an accident. And my mom, who had been a very traditional homemaker, was now in the position of being the provider for her family, for 5 children. And so my role as a child, what I stepped into was really taking care of her and helping her and being really responsible. And so that was a very, understandable response to what was happening in my family. And that aspect of my personality has served me well. I've had a very successful career and many relationships, and I've been able to be of service and contribute to my community. I'm an advocate today for women and children. And being responsible has very much helped me with that. Today I'm a single mom, so obviously taking care of my children. But my default is also to be in that aspect and only that aspect, and it becomes very narrow and limiting, so that my interactions are always about being responsible and taking responsibility and doing, lots of to-do lists, task lists, and active. And so as I lean into that and I only access that part, I cut myself off from other parts in me that I very much need, I'm desperate for. And so although it's super great that I'm a really avid volunteer, my family and I, my children and I have an organization. We serve families living in homeless shelters. This is one of our busiest times of year. And I love it, and what we do is amazing, and the community that supports us is amazing. Our volunteers are exquisite, and it's wonderful. Who would judge that? But what happens is I get totally out of balance because I work full time and I have 3 kids, and I get very little sleep, and usually end up getting sick, and I'm out of balance. And what I really need is rest and replenishment and spontaneity and unstructured, uncommitted time. And so when I'm in this really active, avid, responsible self, my shadow is the parts of me that would have me rest and not be committed and not take on so much and be more spontaneous or playful. And so by leaning into one, I create shadows of others. And so in this work, we begin to work with this model and look at where are we identified and where are we out of balance. And in contrast, or in opposite to that, what have we disowned and denying? And what is it that we actually need for balance? And those answers and the solution is usually found in creating space to embrace some shadow aspects, or at least creating the space for them to be present, or for us to have access to them.
Do you think that denying a shadow part of ourselves can actually make us physically ill?
Absolutely. I think that there's actually some practitioners of our work who work specifically with illness and issues, health issues, and body issues, that these aspects that we're referring to as selves, that this responsible self in me, this quality of being responsible, we look at it as a self within us. And that these selves are also expressed. If we don't give them voice and we don't create consciousness around them, they will find a way to be expressed, and that can often be through illness or injury. And it's also, it can be very subtle. As, you know, getting sick is a signal that we're out of balance. And what we want, you know, Shakti and I want in putting this book out there is to give people the opportunity to have conscious choice. I believe that when we create the environment for conscious choice, we can shift our lives, we can heal, we can change the course of our life by creating the space for conscious choice. And so I can choose to be responsible, I can choose to access some more being energy, a more relaxing quality, but I'm not beholden to one or the other, that I can have choice about how much I'm moving in one or another aspect. And so, you know, when I get sick, I think with life-threatening illnesses or serious illness of that nature, I'm not an expert, and I'm not saying that by, you know, if you do consciousness work, you don't get sick. That's not true. You know, we do get sick. Life happens. There's many things that happen on the physical plane that I don't understand, and I would never presume to be an authority on. But I know for me, getting sick and having a cold, or getting a stomach flu, or getting bronchitis, you know, that those are precipitated by choices I'm making where I'm living a life out of balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When a relationship ends, a relationship between spouses or partners, significant others, whatever, how can we gain insights in a situation like that that might help us move on?
You're saying when a relationship comes to an end, how would we move on, or what do we suggest?
In a consciousness, in a consciousness context, because it's going to seem like the end of the world, but there are insights to be made, I know. And if you can talk,
absolutely. Yeah, I would say the greatest growth I've experienced in my life is tied to the most painful experiences in my life. And I think when we're in the initial phases of the pain and the grief, that period of time is about nurturing and compassion and gentleness. And so anybody who's in the throes of grief and in the beginning stages of separating, or loss of a loved one, or even changing a job, losing a job that you've had for many years, or a career, there's a grieving period. And so in that space, we really create room for just nurturing and gentleness and compassion. And as we stabilize a little more and we're moving through that phase, we can look at what are the gifts that are brought to us. And usually there's pain, there's conflict, there's tension, we have judgment. And if we can identify and name those, we can begin to break, sort of unpack that. Okay, what is that? This person, left me and I'm judging them for these reasons. And we can actually use those judgments that we're holding. We can use those points and where we feel the most pain. We can actually work with those to investigate what's being offered to us in that. And we can really grow and heal. And because we take each of these experiences that are happening externally as a reflection of our internal process. So what is being offered to us in these opportunities is how we can grow and change and heal and really move beyond that. And so, but again, if anybody is in that phase, I think, we feel pain. And like I said, when I started drinking, I wanted relief. My reaction is still today. When I have an adverse reaction to life, when something happens that I don't like, I want relief. I don't want pain. And I don't, go there willingly. But, with these tools and with the spiritual life, I've been able to embrace, what's been given to me and actually learn and move beyond the, immediate event.
Mm-hmm. One last question, and I'll let you go. What is, let's say, the most important thing for us to remember about being in relationships? If we're in a relationship, one thing to keep in mind as we go along.
I think the greatest. I just think that relationships that are difficult, I just want to say it is as hard as you think it is. I don't think that these growing pains are, easier, for one person or another. So I think the first order of business is to have some gentleness with ourselves and compassion and some gentleness with the people we're in relationship, whether it's our partner or our family or our children. And just that often by just having some gentleness with ourselves, we can ease up on those around us and we create space for insights to happen and for some consciousness or an experience of consciousness or awareness. We give ourselves that opportunity by having that gentleness. And I think, the idea that we can't change another person, we can't, we didn't cause it, we can't cure it, we can't control it. It's one of my favorite things. That I can just look at my life as a patch of land in a yard, and that I have a fence around that yard, and I am tilling my own soil. And as much as I want to look over the fence and see how they planted it, and I would do it differently, and they have weeds or they have garbage, I am responsible for my own little patch of land. And it can feel, so I can feel helpless and powerless because I want them to change or I want a circumstance to be different. But it's so empowering to focus on my own plot of land, to bring the focus back to myself, to look inside, and it is the only way to become empowered is by focusing on myself and doing my own inner work.
Your website for finding out more about the book, ShaktiGawain.com, and you also have a blog, your own blog, SoccerMomSpirituality.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would recommend both of those. I really enjoyed the blog posts. So yes, definitely take a look at both. The book, by the way, is the Relationship Handbook, A Path to Consciousness, Healing, and Growth from Shakti Gawain and our guest, Gina Vucci. Gina, thanks for being with us today. Your work has given us a lot of insights into parts of ourselves that are too easily overlooked. I appreciate that. And please come back, talk to us again. You're very welcome.
Great. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now. Gina Vucci, and you'll see a link to Gina's website. Actually, I guess Gina's blog and Shakti's website, kind of a combination there going. So maybe we'll put both of those links up. And when you're there, and there being chiefforyourself.com, make sure you subscribe for the blog posts. Those will keep you up to date on what's going on guest-wise, especially in scheduling, because as you probably noticed, we've had some different scheduling situations going on, whereas we normally record at 1 o'clock Pacific time on a Thursday. Today's recording, for instance, is at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, so sometimes we have to make those changes. If we do something a little out of the ordinary, we'll let you know. We'll do that by way of the blog, Genuine. You can also hear the show through the archives on the YouTube page, youtube.com/GeoHost, and that'll get you a lot of the back shows as well. That's going to do it for today. Thanks very much for being with us. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.